It started like a routine business trip and ended in China's secret detention system. Stanley Wong was crossing the border to mainland China when he was stopped. Border police searched his phone and questioned him for several hours.
Then, in the evening, 2 police officers came. They handcuffed me and put a black hood on my head. Then they took me away.
For fear of retribution, we cannot show his face. Stanley Wong is not his real name. His accounts cannot be verified independently, but his story is in line with accounts from other detainees. At that time, border police had begun systematically searching the phones of Hong Kongers crossing the border between Hong Kong and the mainland. A photo of Wong attending a peaceful march in June caught their attention. He explained it was an authorized march and that Hong Kong's laws allowed him to participate, but they wouldn't listen.
They said this was about a matter of national security and that it wasn't up to me to decide what endangering it means. National security is above all other laws. When national security is concerned, they said, we can catch you in Hong Kong or any other place in the world.
Wong was held in a single cell that had been covered in soft material. The glass door was translucent from the outside only, lights left permanently on. Over and over they interrogated him, asking about photos on his phone and contacts to foreign nationals.
I had to crouch like this for the whole duration of the interrogation. They placed me right under an air conditioner, with the wind blowing at me constantly. Each interrogation lasted a few hours. And whenever they thought I didn't sit well, they would beat me, like this, punch my back or kick me in the legs.
The number of people who've been detained at the border remains unknown. Wong says he was able to catch glimpses into other cells that held people whom he believes were fellow Hong Kongers caught at the border. After 36 hours, he was released.
My family tried to ask the public security where I was, but they just wouldn't say anything. The police even denied they knew me and that I had crossed the border. I understood that I could easily be disappeared any time.
He's dealt with the experience quite well, he says, and he won't let it stop him. But now, when he crosses a border, his heart starts to beat a little faster.
Let's bring in the reporter now who filed that for us. DW's Matthias Bölinger joining us from Beijing. Good day to you, Matthias. Matthias, is there any way to know how widespread this violent form of intimidation is right now?
It's very hard to say. What we know is that, especially in August, there was a campaign to intimidate Hong Kongers at the border by searching their phones and questioning them. Most people were stopped at the border. They were questioned at the border and then let go after a few hours. These cases like the man's that we just saw, where people were taken away into secret prisons or interrogation facilities are much rarer. What we know is, of course, the case of one British consulate employee, Simon Cheng, who was held there for 15 days and who has just given an account of torture that was much worse than what our man here describes.
Okay, so we're not only talking about torture, though, we're also talking about, as Stanley Wong expressed, one of his fears of being disappeared. Now, what is being disappeared, and how much of a threat is that for Hong Kong protesters?
Well, people can be disappeared in China at any time. They will be taken into some facilities that are especially run. We know from mainland Chinese disappeared that they can be held up to several months, even more than a year in these detention facilities without their relatives being noticed. I am not aware of any case of people during this protest movement having been disappeared in this way. What we hear of, or what we know of, is that there have been allegations earlier. One Hong Kong bookseller disappeared for several months in a Chinese detention center, and he says he was kidnapped from Hong Kong's streets.
Okay, this is a brutal toolkit, if we could call it that, that the Chinese authorities are putting together. How effective is intimidation right now for the protesters in Hong Kong?
The effect that intimidation has had so far is to stir up people's anger. We are seeing several tactics of intimidation. These border controls that, by the way, applied also to journalists, although no journalist was being detained at the border. There were just one set. The other set is to ramp up the police action and the police brutality, also the weaponry of the police to crack down harder on protesters. What we're seeing this week, this siege of the university that some protesters had occupied, is of course a tactics that has little in common with riot control and more in common with warfare or combating terrorists who have occupied or taken hostage of a certain place. So all these tactics have not been able to keep people off the streets, and they have contributed their part in making the radicals more radical and escalating violence. So it is quite unclear what China is aiming to achieve with these tactics at the moment.
Matthias Bölinger, thanks so very much for that report and for our talk this morning from Beijing.